All right, let's talk about the security landscape for January 2026. Look, I get it. The number of new threats out there is just insane. It can feel totally overwhelming. But today, we're going to cut right through all that noise and focus on what you actually need to know to stay safe.
Okay, before we jump in, I gotta give a huge shout out. All the data and the core analysis we're about to walk through comes from the fantastic work done over at the NURICAPS YouTube channel. We're taking their incredible research and boiling it down for you into the key takeaways. So here's the big question, right? Last month alone, we saw a staggering 5,143 new security flaws discovered. It's literally impossible to keep track of all of them. So how in the world do you sift through all that noise to find the handful of threats that are actually being used by hackers? The ones that really put you at risk? Well, that's exactly what we're going to figure out today.
But before we get to the juicy numbers, we've got to get on the same page with some of the lingo. If you don't know what these key terms mean, none of the rest of it makes sense. So let's do a quick breakdown. So first up, you're going to see this a lot, CVE. That stands for Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures. The best way to think of it is like a recall number for your car. When a specific flaw is found in a piece of software, it gets its own unique CVE number. This just gives everyone a standard way to talk about the same problem. But here's the absolute key. A CVE just tells you a problem exists. It does not tell you if anyone is actually using it to break in. And that's where this next term comes in, the CISA KEV. KEV, that's the important part, stands for Known Exploited Vulnerabilities. This is a special catalog run by the U.S. government's cybersecurity agency, CISA. This is basically the government's official most wanted list for security flaws. If a CVE makes it onto this list, it means they have hard evidence that attackers are out there using it right now. Now, the government isn't the only player in this game. You've also got the VulnCheck KEV. This is a similar list, but it's run by a private company called VulnCheck, and they often have some big advantages. The best way to think about it is like a private investigator's expanded case file. It's often faster, and it digs up more dirt than the official reports. Okay, so let's compare these two head-to-head. On one hand, you've got the CISA KEV. It's official, it's government-backed, but that also means it can be a bit slow. On the other hand, you have VulnCheck. They're a private company, so they can move way faster. We're talking over 20 days faster on average. Think about that. That's almost 3 weeks. So what does that mean for you? It means if you're only watching the official list, you could be weeks behind the bad guys. That's why we look at both. Okay, now that we know the lingo, let's zoom all the way out and look at the entire universe of threats that popped up in January. Yeah, just like we mentioned at the top, the grand total of new CVEs for January was 5,143. Just let that sink in for a second. Over 5,000 new potential ways for someone to get into the software we all rely on. It's just impossible for any one person or even a big team to keep up with. So, out of all those thousands of flaws, how many were actually dangerous? Well, check this out. Only about 8% are labeled critical, which sounds low, but when you add the almost 28% that are high, you realize that more than a third of all new vulnerabilities are seriously bad news. The average risk score for the month was a 6.88, which is already pretty high. So what kind of bugs were we seeing the most? Number one, by a long shot, is CW79, or cross-site scripting. That's basically when a hacker tricks a website you trust into running their malicious code in your browser. Nasty stuff. Next up is CW862 missing authorization, which is exactly what it sounds like, a door that someone forgot to put a lock on. And then you have the classic CW89 SQL injection, which is a way attackers can take over an entire database. All right, we've seen the big, scary universe of potential problems. Now it's time to get to what really matters. Let's cut through all that noise and focus only on the bugs that hackers are actually using right now. This is the real danger zone. So we started with over 5,000 threats, right? The official CISA KEV list boils all of that down to just 17. That's it. These are the ones the US government says you have to fix now. And who are the main culprits here? No surprise, Microsoft shows up with 3 big ones in things like Windows and Office, and Smarter Tools, which makes popular email servers, has 2. Okay, but now let's layer in what VulnCheck found. They spotted 31 active threats. That's almost double what the official government list caught. And here's the really important part. Look at what they found that CISA missed. We're seeing big enterprise firewalls from Fortinet and, this is huge,
a bunch of popular home routers from brands like D-Link and Tenda. The threat is coming for the office and the living room. So, what's the big deal? What actually happens when one of these vulnerabilities gets used against someone? Well, the results are pretty terrifying. Let's look at some of the stuff that hit the dark web just in January alone, often as a direct result of these kinds of attacks. I mean, look at this. The damage to U.S. national security is just staggering. We're talking about internal weapons documents from Lockheed Martin, sensitive tech info from Boeing, military drone operation files, and even schematics for a Navy destroyer. And to top it all off, personal data from inside the FBI. It doesn't get much more serious than that. And make no mistake, this isn't just a US problem. This is happening everywhere. We also saw blueprints for a Russian nuclear submarine hit the web, French defense secrets about the conflict in Yemen, confidential mining documents from Japan, and even internal files from the giant AI company Palantir. This is a global crisis. Okay, I know. Seeing all of that can feel pretty hopeless. But the point isn't to scare you, it's to arm you. And the good news is you don't need to be a cybersecurity genius to protect yourself. It comes down to a simple, clear plan. It's a really simple 3-step strategy. First, identify. You gotta know what software you're even running. You can't protect what you don't know you have. Second, prioritize. Forget the 5,000 maybes. Focus on those KV lists. Those are the actual fires burning right now. And third, prevent. Just get into a rhythm of updating your stuff and make sure you have good backups. So let's make this super practical. What should you, at home, do right now? First, go run Windows Update and make sure Office is up to date. Second, and this is the one most people forget, log into your home router and check for a firmware update, especially if it's a D-Link, Tenda, or TotalLink. And finally, the easiest thing in the world, just turn on automatic updates for everything you can. All right, for all the business admins and IT pros out there, your to-do list is similar, just on a bigger scale. Job number 1, no excuses. Patch all 17 of those CISA KEV items like yesterday. Then pull up that VulnCheck list and start knocking out those extra ones. While you're at it, please go verify that your critical data backups are actually working. And definitely put a spotlight on those high-risk systems we talked about, email servers like SmarterMail and Zimbra, and those Fortinet firewalls. Look, if you forget everything else we talked about today, please remember this. Yeah, there were over 5,000 new flaws, but the only ones that really mattered were the 17 to 31 that were actively being used to break in. And while everyone was drowning in noise, real military secrets were being stolen. The message couldn't be clearer. Update now. And you know, that really is the bottom line. This all seems so complex, but pretty much every expert will tell you the same thing. The overwhelming majority of cyber attacks could be stopped by one simple habit: just keeping your stuff updated. It's truly the most powerful weapon you have. Hey, if this breakdown helped you make sense of all this, do us a huge favor and hit that subscribe button and give this a like. It genuinely helps us keep making these explainers for you. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there.